right, so we're just going to start off, just state your name and your age, if you're comfortable, and where you're from.
Okay, my name is Sherry Appleman, and I'm originally from Neosho, Missouri, and my husband and I moved to Arkansas 23 years this year, so, and we've lived here on the lake about 12 years.
So tell us what happened the day of the spill, where you were, just a little bit of that experience.
Actually, I was at home, and I heard about it via Facebook. It wasn't on the news. I had one of my friends that supposedly works for the city here, and he had it on Facebook, so that's how I found out.
How did you feel about the news? What did you think when you started hearing that there was a spill?
I immediately started thinking of those pictures from, like, the Gulf and the Exxon Valdez. I immediately started thinking about all those oil spills that I've seen over the years on the news. And my first thought was the wildlife, actually.
Have you heard of the Kalamazoo spill? The oil spill in the Kalamazoo River?
A little bit, not much.
That was also the same material that spilled here. So I was just curious if you had heard about it.
Well, they keep telling us different stories about what kind of oil actually spilled here. I don't think the public actually knows what actually spilled here.
Yeah, some discrepancies in the reporting. So speaking of Exxon, how has Exxon been treating you? Have you had any contact from Exxon?
No. No, the only contact I've had is I called last night to the number that their claims number, and someone contacted me after that about 9 o'clock last night. It was an odd phone call, to say the least. The guy was at home, talking to his dog in the background instead of talking to me, and he was just real anxious to write a check and get rid of me. That's what I felt like.
So this is the claims representative, the number you were given. You call that number, and he's at home, and he's distracted by his dog?
Yeah, well, he called me back.
Oh,
he called me back a few hours later.
From home?
From home. And he was in Virginia somewhere. He wasn't somebody that was even here. Which I would think their claims representatives would be here and knocking on people's doors, is what I would think. But,
So he was anxious to write you a check. Did he, in fact, write you a check?
No.
What did he tell you about going forward with your claim?
He said that whatever receipts I had to save, and he would be getting back in touch with me, or someone would be.
Did you mention any physical symptoms that you were having as part of your claim?
Yes, and I told him that I went to the doctor. It just so happened my husband and I both had doctor's appointments Monday, and I talked, and it was our oncologist doctor, and I talked to him a little bit about the spill and what had happened to me, and at that time he said, if you seem like you're getting worse, he said, let me know, and we'll do some chest x-rays and blood work and all that stuff. But I chose not to do it Monday. I probably should have, but I didn't. So
do you plan on following through with, following up with your doctor and letting him know?
Yeah, if this continues, because the coughing and the sinuses and not having, my throat is burning all the time. So whether it's beer or water or tea, I have to have something to drink because my throat's just on fire all the time.
And how many people do you live with here?
It's just my husband and I.
And is your husband experiencing the same symptoms?
Not as bad as I am. Now he's been more the nauseousness and the headaches for him because of his cancer. So.
And you said earlier a little bit about he was diagnosed with cancer in January, and so in between treatment, what is the experience like since the spill and breathing this in?
He's just been horribly, horribly sick. I mean, he cannot eat. Every time he eats, he's throwing up. It's, he's lost more weight than he had already lost. It's just not easy for him. It's real hard for me to watch him not being able to eat,
Has anything been mailed to your home from Exxon? Any sort of flyer or documents?
We got a little newsletter thing from him. It was a joke. It didn't tell me anything new, didn't answer any questions. It was more like them giving themselves a pat on the back for a job well done, and the job's not done. They've got a long ways to go before the job's done.
Previous to this spill, were you aware that there was a Exxon pipeline here, the Pegasus pipeline?
No.
Have you talked to any of your neighbors if they had known about it?
No. The neighbors I've talked to, nobody knew about it.
So nothing, newsletters in the mail mentioning it? Nothing?
No. We were actually surprised because this is a man-made lake, and there's a lot of swamp, slough areas all around this lake. And so when we heard that there was an oil spill, we were like, a truck had to have dumped, fell over or something in the highway. That's what we thought. We thought it was a joke when they said it was a pipeline, because we thought there's no way they had put pipelines in slough areas and in areas especially where houses were going to be built someday, and they're only 2 feet under. The pipeline is only 2 feet under. And then in Maumelle, the pipe's actually exposed. There's like a 5-6 foot area where the pipe is actually exposed above the water. It's nobody knew anything about this.
You mentioned the Maumelle area. That is the big. That's the big water source for 400,000.
The watershed, yeah.
The watershed. And the pipeline runs right through that watershed. Yeah. Have you heard anything about the Central Arkansas water officials? They're apparently drafting a resolution to try to have that pipeline moved altogether away from that watershed. What do you think about that? Any thoughts about the idea of it being moved?
Well, okay, let me put it into perspective. My husband is 65. He was born in 1948. The pipeline was built in 1948. Okay? After 65 years, people, things start to break down because they're getting old, And they've already determined by this oil leak that the pipeline is fragile at best. So if they go start to moving it, there's that much more oil they're going to lose into our environment. I just don't see, and even just fixing this pipeline is going to put more oil into the environment than what we've already got. I don't see how they can do that and use that as an excuse to make things better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
It's just, not a good idea. That pipeline just needs to be shut down, and it doesn't need to be replaced. At least not in this area.
So you mentioned the environment and the wildlife. It sounds like that's a passion of yours. Do you hunt or fish or garden?
Yeah, all the above. Fish. That's why we moved here, so I could fish. And first few years I was out there every day. I was the lady out in the boat with her dog. And if people didn't see me and my dog out in the lake, they would call to thinking something would be wrong with us. So, but I became disabled and I can't really get out there and fish like I used to. But yeah, I mean, we still garden and I still fish occasionally. And you know, I worry about my ducks and my geese and, you know, my kingfishers and the beaver that swims by every morning, you know. I worry about all the animals. And I was telling somebody earlier, I haven't seen any of our turtles come up to lay their eggs yet. And it's time. But I haven't seen any turtles.
It's also duck season from what we've gathered.
Yeah, they're hatching their babies right now. And most of the time, the ducks and the geese lay their eggs in that slough area where they moved the oil to. They moved that oil in there. They pumped that oil into that slough from where it was originally at.
We are pretty sure we witnessed some of that in our investigating. We've been doing a lot of walking around, kind of getting to know the area, and we've been curious because we don't know this area as well as y'all do. And having lived here 12 years, I mean, the impact sounds like it's pretty great. What do you think that this will do potentially to the economy in the area? There seems to be a lot of fishermen, a lot of duck hunters. What do you think this might do?
I think it's very sad what it's going to do. I think a lot of people will lose their businesses. I think it's going to kill off a lot of our wildlife. And I think it will eventually get to our pets. And it breaks my heart to look that far down the road. Because it's bad enough now. It's just going to get worse.
I want to take a moment